billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Yesterday we started the third ruku of Surah Al-Baqarah, in which there was a change in topic, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly addressed His people, directly addressed mankind in the most beautiful of ways. Ya ayyuhan nas. Nas meaning all people, all mankind, with its root derivation in the word uns, which means love. And it's a very deep form of love. And the people of exegesis categorize love into 10 levels. And they say that the 9th level is that in which you forget everything, where you're so love-stricken that you're not affected by hunger or thirst because of that constant remembrance and that constant dhikr. And that is the state that a believer should aim to be in when it comes to his relationship or her relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alladhi ja'ala lakum al-arda firashan is the next ayah that we're going to focus on today, which is verse number 2. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues his reasoning for mankind to remind them why they should be in His service, why they should submit themselves to Him. And He begins by reminding them that He is the one, Alladhi ja'ala lakum al-arda, that He created the earth, firashan was samaa bina'an, that He created the earth as a place of settlement. The fact that the earth has all of the perfect conditions for human beings to exist in itself is a case of deep wonderment. Firashan was samaa, He talks about the surface of the earth being comfortable to walk upon. Was samaa, and the sky. So these two phrases, firasha was sama, is an indication that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, from the ground to the sky, from the lowest of low that you can perceive to the highest of high that you can perceive, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a perfect condition for you. Now if you reflect on the science of the earth, the science of the planet, whether you go to its core, whether you go to its oceans, whether you look at the gravitational energy between the moon and the earth and how that controls the oceans, whether you look at the level of oxygen in the air, the nitrogen in the air, whether you look at the evaporation of water, whether you look at the perfect balance of the gases in this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has balanced this. And if you reflect deeply, these are signs for the believers to bring them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then He mentions specifically the rain. He says, وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً, that He sends down rain from the sky. Rain itself is a huge sign for believers to reflect upon. We just, in this culture, we just say, oh, it's raining outside, and we have negative connotations for it. But rain is what gives sustenance to the earth. It's where crops come from. And whether you look at the hydrological cycle, its various steps, from evaporation, transpiration, precipitation, the percolation of water through the rocks, it's absolutely fascinating how these processes come together. Rain is mentioned for another reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the example of the Quran and makes it similar to rain. That when rain drops on fertile soil, crops come forth from that land. And the heart of the believer should be like fertile soil. You should be receptive to the rain, to the nurani rain of the Holy Quran, so that crops can come forward from within you, using that analogy. But in the same way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَيَهْدِي بِهِ كَثِيرًا, that the same rain, if it just comes on rock, it's not going to have that same impact. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through this ayah, gives us a reminder that we should soften our hearts. فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ, that from within there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes fruits to come forward. Again, these are signs for the believers. If you look at one of the modern day difficulties or calamities, it's pollution and litter. If you look at supermarkets, they're constantly obsessed with reducing waste. But if you look at the fruits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designs and brings forward on trees, when they fall to the earth, their wrappings do not act as litter, but actually, subhanallah, they act as fertilizer, they act as a source of nutrients for the soil. They degrade naturally in the earth and do not create waste, which itself is just absolutely remarkable. And the skin of fruits itself is a delight for human beings. They have done studies where they have seen the effect of just looking at fruit, and they found that it releases in human brains and in animal brains endorphins. These are relaxing chemicals. Now we have a whole society that's immersed in depression, and part of the reason for that is we no longer interact with nature. We no longer spend time in the company of trees. We no longer look at natural things, whether it's bees or insects or animals or rivers or lakes or fruits. Anything we look at is in concrete walls. And so this is a reminder, because fruit itself, the skin of fruit has scents, beautiful scents. If you pay attention next time to natural organic fruits, or you go past an orchard, it gives an aroma, and that aroma is deeply relaxing to the human mind. And not only are they beautiful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us, rizqan lakum, that as well as this deep beauty, and if you look at some flowers and their intricate patterns, there is a number, and that mathematical name has escaped my mind. I don't know, Hafiz, you're an engineer. There's a number in nature. It's not the Bernoulli's number. It's a different number that whenever it appears in nature, it's supposed to be the most relaxing to the human eye. And that number appears everywhere in nature. If you look at the spirals, the geometry, the ratio of the circumference to the radii of all these flowers, it's designed for absolute perfection and relaxation. And not only does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remind us of that, but says rizqan lakum, and you can eat it. And when you eat these things, they give you more health than these other things that are manufactured. Again, it's a sign of come closer to me, come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a reminder for us that we are really good as a community at asking whether or not food is halal. So whether we go into shops, we'll always say, is it halal or not? Or usually we'll say that. But the Quranic principle is halal and tayyib. Halal and good. And these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions are a combination of both. فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. So by reflecting upon these signs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not set up equals to me, and do not set up equals to me in worship. So all of these things, when you look at the mathematical probability of these things happening, they are, we talk about evolution as this kind of thing. Even if you accepted that, ultimately you have to go back to the source. Where did everything begin from? And the fact that everything is so miraculously beautiful. And often if you watch documentaries about the deep sea and the deep ocean and the beauty that happens there, again, it just makes you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set up artistry in every nook and cranny of this planet and the universe. And these are all for our wonderment and delight, and for us to marvel at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for the human being naturally to say subhanallah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be people of reflection, to be people of knowledge, to be people of understanding. Allow us to inculcate the sciences and maths into our everyday lives to appreciate the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tomorrow is a fascinating ayah. So having begun by saying worship me, and like the people before you, and then talking about some of his signs, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bring forward his power and the power of the Quran. So the lecture tomorrow, I strongly recommend that inshallah you attend. It's going to be talking again about the verses of the Holy Quran. Jazakallah khair wa ma alayna illa al-balagh.